information. In fact, in an hour, I hope we can, 55 minutes, I hope we can get it all done. But I just want to be sensitive to that right off, because you can say, well, Chuck, yeah, it's easy for you to say. Well, let's talk about it. If we're going to give you a handout of all the slides, but it's just an idea of what we're doing today. We're talking, first of all, I'm just going to tell you a story. Then we're going to look at our goals. And then we're going to talk about the emotional roller coaster. And if you haven't been on that, that's quite a ride. Understanding the difference between change and transition. There's a difference in understanding stress, because there's a good and a bad stress. We're talking about perspectives. This is a journey in terms of the job search. And if you're going through it, or if you know of somebody who's going through it, we're talking about it's a journey. Think of it as a book with many, many chapters. Because it's very easy to just come tightly focused and say, I've got to get a job. Well, let's put it together. And about talking with other people as you go through a job search. One of the things I do is speak at a lot of churches. And one of the talks I give is how can the congregations respond to people with job loss? So many churches now are trying to deal with a tsunami of job loss, and they really are not sure. What do we do? What do we do? Some churches are taking a lot of action. Others are, just saying, well, I don't know how to handle it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about talking with important people in our life, but then steps moving forward. Try to put it all together. Let me tell you a story a minute first, just to give you a perspective. There was this person who once worked as a counselor in a mental health facility and worked with hundreds of people in different aspects of their life and challenges and difficulties that they ran into and needed professional help. And then took off and became executive director of a foundation, hospital foundation. Then one day, an executive recruiter came around and said, how would you like to join another organization? And it was a global HR consulting firm that helped with outplacement and with organizational development and consulting. And that person just took that job after about 3 months, said, hey, that might be a good move, might be a good career move. And then worked for about 13 and a half years helping people in career transition management. And oftentimes was there right at the site of when a person was told that they were losing a job. So this person would come in, the manager, HR, whoever it might be, would let them know that your job is no longer there. And you can imagine the hundreds of people that this person saw, there were a variety of different reactions. But it was, usually right after you've just been hit in the head, and some of you may know firsthand what that's like. And then counseling people and trying to help them through the next 24 hours, and then going forward from there. And then this person became unemployed. There was changes in the organization, and bought up by a larger global group, and new bosses and new procedures, and you know how all that goes. Whenever there's change in an organization, then became unemployed, then became an independent business consultant and reinvented themselves, and then currently dealing with an unemployed son. Now, that person is me, and you might have read it, because there it was in the front page of the business section. He advised fired workers, and then he was one. I never expected to be out there, so there was a big story on it. So I'm talking about me, and when I talk about knowing firsthand the pain and working with literally hundreds of people who've gone through it, I'm very sensitive to the pain. I'm very much aware of it. When I was unemployed, I know in my head cognitively what I'm supposed to do, but on the other side of the street is you're dealing with it. You're experiencing it. The shoe's on the other foot. It hurts. And you have all kinds of feelings, so we're going to talk about that. And then the most recent thing is my 38-year-old son, who was had a very good job with Hayworth, got laid off. So I live with that kind of on a daily basis too. And I live with his pain. So you can see that it still hits me. I got a passion for people who are going through pain with unemployment. And so when someone asked me yesterday, you coming in? You driving in from, I drove for about an hour and 45 minutes. When I said, yeah, if I can help one person, it's worth it. So bear with me. I know what it's like, been there, but I hope I can give you a lot of tips in the future for it. What are we going to do? What are we involved in? All right? I'd invite you to ask questions at any time too. We're small enough that we can put it together and understand what's happening. Well, as I said, we're on a journey. Maybe I should just ask, how many of you are unemployed at the current time? Okay, good percentage. And several of you know of people who are unemployed because it touches everywhere. It's, I used to say it's everywhere, and now I know it's everywhere because, when I get home this afternoon, my son is spending the weekend with me again and his kids, and I'll go right back to the pain. He just sold his car yesterday, and he was kind of grieving about that. He sold his camper 2 weeks ago. He needs money to live. So, there's a lot involved. Let's talk a little bit about that. When we say that, we're on a journey here. Just think of it, that a book has many chapters, and the chapter that you find yourself today is not going to be the chapter that's going to be tomorrow or the next day, and so think of it as a whole process that we're walking through. Life is nothing but a process. Life is nothing but different chapters. We have an opportunity to write those chapters. In other words, I'm saying we have control, we have opportunities. Last thing we want to do, I was just interviewed for a television public service announcement, and they were asking me different things to do and things not to do. But one of the things I said is take control. Don't be a victim. Don't be a poor victim. I know that is tough. I've been there. And my son he constantly says to me, I'm not going to act that way. I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to project a positive image because you're always one person away from your next job. That's why networking, and they're probably covering that in other areas, but I'm covering kind of the emotional and the spiritual part of it. But meeting other people. I come right out and say that I'm a believer. You don't have to be, but just so you understand where I'm coming from in terms of when I reflect on faith and belief. When I would go out and meet with people, and I'd be sitting there and knowing somebody in the room next to me is just getting the bad news, I always look for three things. Whether they're going to be successful in making this through. Do they have a faith? Someone, a creator, a being, something that's bigger than themselves? That was number one. Number two was their social network. Do they have people that they can respond to? Is there a church? Is there a family? Is there friends? Because having a network of people is extremely important. And that's what I just did on the PSA too. Number one thing to do in a downtime, stay connected. Connect, and introduce yourself to other people. One person away from a job. So and that requires energy when we're sometimes feeling pretty down, but it's kind of like you give your own self a kick in the rear and saying, get up and get going. And I know it's tough. Okay, so it's making something happen, and that's what we're going to talk about is that journey. Now I'm going to give you a whole bunch of perspectives, and we can hand out the handouts now, Jennifer, if you have those, because we'll be getting into that. But perspectives is such a big thing as we take a look at the job search, and then hope in a transitional work world. I said that I speak for a lot of churches and different organizations, but the work world is changing, and we're going to talk about the paradigm. If we think that the work world that we're just coming from, and you saw it change, And where it's going, it requires a paradigm shift. And I think you all know what a paradigm shift is. It means completely turn your head around 360 and start looking in another direction. Because we can't just think of, oh, the way it's been is the way it's going to be. All right. With me? Let's understand grief and loss, first of all, just so that we put it in perspective. They often say that a job loss is one of the 3 top losses in a person's life. It could be a divorce, death, job loss, are ranked up there as a high. So let's not kid ourselves. It's a significant part. If a person is a breadwinner and the sole breadwinner, it's a big part of a loss of who we are. Men probably take it even harder than women. So when we think of loss, what do we do? Well, then we have to think of grieving. Loss means sadness. Loss means crying. And one of the things I'll talk about in a few minutes is you've got to acknowledge the loss. Now, there were people that I'd meet with that just, when I'd come in and I'd be talking with them, they would be crying and just, you know all the things that go through your head when it happens. I remember when it happened with me, I didn't have anyone there. They kind of just told me about what the situation was. It was about 5:30 at night. Everybody had off because I ran several offices. I was by myself. The person went back to Detroit. I just sat there, and I remember what it was like. All the things that went through my head, I just felt numb. Just like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. I don't know. Finally got up, and this is what I had counseled many other people. Finally got up, got the gumption, told my wife about what was happening. And I gave her a hint over the phone. I said, I lost my job, and let's talk about it. So, you go through that part that's very, very painful. So when we think of tears and sorrow, I really advise that when you're with somebody who you really trust, or even if you're by yourself, allow yourself to go through the emotions. It's very healthy. After I had lost my job, a close friend of mine is a psychologist. I called him up and I said, Bill, you got any openings today? I just need to talk, which I did. It was very, very healthy. I shared my feelings. I called my pastor, told him what was going on, saw him within a day. I talked with my wife extensively, talked with my kids. I tried to just process and let all the feelings out. And they were trusted people. It was, where you could just be vulnerable. I didn't share that out in public with everybody else, but that's important. So when we look at losses up here, I'm sure I missed some. I look out at there, fear is probably a feeling in there. Fear, and because we'll say a little bit about fear. It motivates us, but it's not a very nice thing. But what did we lose? Well, we've lost jobs, we've lost our income. A lot of the friends that we worked with, the peers, might have feel like part of our self-worth. A big chunk of that is gone. We've lost our titles. Some of us are dipping in our retirement savings. I'm dipping into mine to help my son. Never planned on it. But I'm not going to let him go without health insurance and paying his house. So I may have to work a few extra years, but your kids are your kids. Lose a health plan, yeah, paying COBRA for him as he's collecting unemployment, which doesn't begin to cover. You lose social status. Some people, as we all know, foreclosure on homes, self-esteem, identity. And one of the things in terms of perspective that I'm going to talk about is, remember, you are not your job. So often we're connected with that. Your job doesn't define you. So I think as I've gone through this transition, I used to say, somebody would just say, hey, Chuck, tell me about yourself. Well, I'm Senior Vice President, Managing Director of so-and-so, and that's how I define myself. Someone says today, Chuck, tell me about yourself. I say, well, I'm a believer, I'm a Christian, I work at this organization. I don't use my title anymore. And I just start talking that way because this experience has changed who Chuck is and what I'm about and where I'm going. So one of the things that you're going to hear periodically, have you ever heard of post-traumatic stress growth? That can be something too. And that's why I don't want to just be pie in the sky. Going through experiences where we go through the valleys really help develop us, and we come out better. But that's pretty easy to say when you feel yourself at the bottom of the valley. But I guarantee you there will be growth. Most people have tremendous growth. My son has said that already. When I showed this to him yesterday, I said, hey, this is what I'm going to be talking about. I said, did I include all the losses? And he says, well, it sounds kind of crass, but why don't you just put it underneath there that it sucks? Well, okay. Maybe that's right where it is. It sucks, does it? It's not what we want. But in post-traumatic stress growth, oftentimes we go through things. His daughter said to him, she says, Daddy, it's so nice that you're home and we see you and we have dinner every night. Because he ran all the operations in Big Rapids for Hayworth. And often left at 6 in the morning, came home at 7 at night. And said, we get to see you. And he's doing stuff. And so the family is, so the first thing he says is, I realize I've been neglecting my family. Learned it already. He's going for a walk. Yesterday he went running. He says, oh man, I've been working so hard, I haven't been taking care of myself. I said, get out there, lose some weight. You need this during this time. Exercise. You got to have fun. In my interview a few minutes ago, I said, one of the things, schedule a time for some fun every day. Make sure you go fishing. Make sure you do something that's good for you, because fun is very helpful. Well, let's talk about the emotional roller coaster. I would often tell people, as they were emotionally bleeding, I'd say, you're now going to be on an emotional roller coaster, and it's not going to be, there's going to be some highs and there's going to be some lows. And I just tried to prepare them that it's not like this, but there's going to be exhilaration, there's going to be fun, you're going to find the ideal job, you're going to interview well, you're going to do everything well, and you're part of the top 3. Boom, you don't get it. That roller coaster, you're going along and put all your energy, thoughts. Now, I've seen that with my son twice. He says, man, this is the ideal fit. Talked about it, went back and forth. He says, man, I think the interviews went well. But then he came back realistically. He says, there's probably 50 other people who are just as qualified, if not more. So it's the importance of being likable. Now, this has nothing to do with the spiritual emotional, but one of the things that I teach people in terms of going through dealing with job, be likable. It's one of the key things. You don't get very far in an interview unless you're likable. So a lot of that has to go with eye contact, smile, facial expression, everything. There's a book on it, if you ever want to read it. It's about being liked. Presenter, the author, was speaking for the Chamber of Commerce last year. The importance of being liked. Unfortunately, many employers, you can't get past that if they don't care about you. And they'll make an impression, and the impression is in the first 5 seconds. That's why the smile, looking at them, a good handshake, appearing well, dressing well, everything like that is so crucial, because they're making decisions real quick. Well, the interview somebody else is taking care of, so I can't really get into that. But what do you go through? I think back on myself and what I hear with other people. I felt betrayed by my organization. I mean, I knew what was going to be happening. I saw what was happening. I wasn't surprised. But what I was surprised about is first of all, my boss didn't do it. The president, and then the CEO who had hired me didn't do it. They sent a peer from Detroit, and he says, I'd like to meet with you about some water damage that we had in one of my buildings. and it had gone behind the wallpaper and, souring things. So, oh, okay. Well, I had been at a funeral, but I still got back there in time at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said, well, here's where the damages start talking. He says, no, let's just go to your office. I said, well, the damage is down this hall. Oh, I got to talk to you about something. Let's forget that. So he goes down there and then shared with me that I was no longer needed. Well, I understood it, but for me, it was the fact that I felt set up and then ambushed that hurt me more than the job, because when they recruited me, that was a 3-month process. They did all the assessments. They took my wife and I out for dinner. They did everything to get us to join. And it was a 3-month process, and they asked, and they negotiated, and we really want you. And then to have one of the things like that really hurt. Now, I always used to tell employers when I counseled them, I said, treat your employees with respect and dignity. That's the key thing, because you spend a lot of time on the front end, and when they go out, they're going to be talking about you. Preserve your reputation, treat them well, respect them, all this and that. So for me, all the words I had said to all employers, it just kind of hurt. Like, okay, set them up under a lie and then whack them. But I still understand the perspective. By the way, I had an interesting experience. 2 weeks ago, they had Leadership Summit. In town here, there was, I think, Kentwood Community Church, but they were all around. One of the things, and it was all leaders, church leaders, but business leaders, and one of the things, one of the seminar speakers said, the importance of forgiveness, and talked about forgiveness, and then they went through a whole series of things. I don't know, did you see that at all, Frank? You missed it? And they took leaders through prayers of how you messed up with your employees. They said, if you're like a parent, you've messed up with your kids, and as an employer or a leader, you've done lots of things that caused hurt. So they went through that, and they identified it, and people had to go through quiet times. And they said there's at least one person, if not more, that you need to forgive in terms of your employment, or feel that somebody's done you wrong or something like that. So it was important for me to identify my former organization and everything like that, to just say, it's out, it's done. I'll talk about it, but when you hang on to anger, you hang on to feelings of betrayal, as this person, the speaker said, all you're doing is letting that occupy space in your body. Why give them the advantage of taking space inside your mind and your body? Kick them out. Look what they did to you. Kick them out. Don't let them live with you anymore. I thought that was so visually important for me to just say, Chuck, get rid of it. And I was sharing it with my son too. He says, I don't know if I can yet. He says, I'm still bleeding. He says, there's some times where I just really have to hang on to it. And I said, that's okay. But you can't let that control you. You can't let it be there. You got to just say, okay, stuff happens. And I forgive them. Well, can you identify with some of those? One or two or all of them? Now, relief. My son, working for Hayworth, was very much aware that they were whacking off people right and left for a long period of time. He went down to 4 days a week, got paid for 4 days a week, but was still there 5 days a week and was working 60 hours. So he was, and he kind of knew that this was all coming to a head. So, but yet you get into that denial, you work harder and you try to preserve it and everything like that. But he knew it all. When it was over and done with, he felt relief. He said, at least I don't have to deal with all that stress and all that crap that was going on. And I felt relief. I had a new boss. This person came out of automotive world. I didn't care for that person at all. Rude, political, micromanaging. So I had worked 2 years of I was hooked on sleeping pills. My wife says, this person's going to destroy you. You could see it all. When it was over and done with, at least I'm free from it. Now, granted, I got a bunch of other challenges, but so you can recognize the relief in a lot of stuff. It's like someone that you've cared for with terminal cancer and you're caring for it 24 hours a day and emotionally and everything like that. You're sad to see them go, but you're also relieved that they aren't in the pain and the suffering. If you're a believer, feeling that they're in a better place, so you have the relief and the pain simultaneously. What are some unhealthy coping mechanisms?
Drinking.
What's that? Drinking. Excessive alcohol. Yeah, you don't want to self-medicate. In fact, I saw my son the other day. He had been staying at our cottage all week. I came back and I said, "You weren't self-medicating." He says, "What do you mean?" I says, "Drinking beer all week." So I had a few. I was okay. How about some other unhealthy ways?
Short-tempered with your family.
Short-tempered, being irritable, and yeah, you remember other people are living with you. Try to help that person.
Isolating.
Yeah.
Withdrawing.
Go into hibernation like a bear during the winter. The last thing you want to do. And so in that TV interview that I just did, I said, stay connected with as many people as possible and go out and meet new people. Because people, one person away from your next job, go out and network. But it's easy to stay isolated. When that article in the paper appeared, I got a call from a former bank president. He says, "I read that in the paper." He says, "Would you be willing to meet with me?" And so we had a cup of coffee. I said, "How long's it been?" He says, "A little over a year." I says, "What have you been doing?" "Nothing." He thought as a bank president, everybody would be calling him. After all, I'm this executive, I got this going, I got that going, keep my suits fresh and everything like that. Nobody called him. He thought all his banking friends would be calling him. Now, I only met him once for about 45 minutes, and I said, can I say it in this most loving way possible? Number one, get off your ego. You're president of a small bank. That don't mean squat with any big banks. So quit thinking of yourself as president and CEO. That's not where you are. That's a title. Let it go and start getting real, because with a big bank, you're going to fit in maybe in this setting or that setting. So number two, quit thinking that someone's going to call you. Getting a job is a lot of work. You got to go out there and you got to plan your job search, and then you got to work your plan. Here again, that'll be in other seminars. It's a process. You got to do steps 1, 2, and 3 before you can land a job at 8, 9, and 10. And yet I've seen a lot of people just run out there and start looking in the want ads, which is about 16, 17% of available jobs. All the good jobs are not listed there. Networking will get you 75 to 80% of the good jobs. I have my son networking day in and day night, but I know a ton of people. My business, I've been in every company in Michigan, you name it, so I can just call up these people and say, "Hey, you meet with my son." Not to ask for a job, but to talk about what's going on in their industry, what's happening. You leave a resume, you're one person away from your next job, because you don't know if they go home, talk with somebody else, and say, "Man, I met this most resilient guy today. He would be sharp. Here, let me give you his resume." So that's the way networking is the key part. Well, unhealthy coping mechanisms in order to stay up with our time. Remember, watching TV, overeating, even prescription drugs, taking more. You might have a sleeping pill. Not unusual where people, when they're going through their trauma, but then you start taking 2, then you take 3, and, it's just, there's a lot of ways. And if you get online, there's all kinds of things that are on this thing too. Now, when I said change versus transition, just so you understand, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with this, but change is an event. Transition is a psychological process that people go through to deal with change. So you're in a period of transition. The change was when you no longer were an employee of something. So I helped churches with this. This one church, I remember, they had met at 10 o'clock Sunday morning for years and years and years and years in their history. They decided to go to 9 and 11 so they could expand and they could get more people and they could go out and evangelize and try to get it. They had a they had about a quarter of the church quit because they're so used to being in the rut and doing it the same way. So when I helped another church, I said, don't just spring it on them. Let's talk about it. We got to do a 6-month process of helping people plan for the change. So you probably didn't get a whole lot of advance notice. Maybe you did. My son had an idea, so already I was giving him tons of stuff in case you do get the notice. I have to do just the irony of something. Out here at the book, at the table out in front, there's Now What? The Healing Journey Through Job Loss, which is a little 32-page booklet that I wrote. And you're welcome to go out there and pick it up. You can also, Frank, who's manning that table today, is there. But interesting, I had finished the manuscript on this and gone all through, and it took maybe 4 or 5 months. I gave it to my wife one night. I had to teach a class. I gave it to my wife, and I said, here. She had never seen it before, and it was finished. I said, here, take a look and read this. And so she read it, and there are references into her, how she helped me, and I also just give a lot of stuff about looking for a job, and then also the faith factor and what it meant for me in terms of having a higher power. Well, I gave it to her, and it's going to hit me again, I know. So I got home, 9 o'clock, and she met me at the door again, just like after I got fired. She says, Chris just got fired. He had called her. He got notified at about 5 o'clock that day. They emptied out the whole plant so nobody would see it. He thought, boy, that's funny. I haven't given anybody time off. I haven't done it. They just didn't want to know, and they get the top guy. They didn't want anybody around. And she says, I just read the book. I went through all of this stuff all over again that we went through, and then he calls. I says, yeah, who can figure? There's also another one that just is hot off the press, not even out, although I brought a couple hundred along. Picking up the pieces after job loss. I don't know if you ever read Our Daily Bread, which is a daily devotional. It's just for job loss. There's 30 every day, kind of a focus for people who are going through job loss. So it's another one. And then also there'll be stuff on there with RBC Ministries where I work on their website. I'm also doing a television program September 13, Day of Discovery. 7:30 in the morning, that'll be shown nationally. But you'll be able to get that CD too. So we're trying to put together a whole package. Now, this was not my role with RBC. I had a whole bunch of other things that I had to do when they hired me. But then they said, our job is to be a resource to people, and our job is to minister, and our job is to help churches, and all this and that. Can you help us? So, God has a plan that I didn't have. And all of a sudden, there I am doing this and doing that and doing that, and here today, and I had no idea. But I've also, since going through the change, you just said, hey, take me where you want to go. It's not about me anymore. So, that helped. You remember how the work world went, well, let's just go back to the agricultural age, and you didn't have hours, and everybody was kind of taking care of themselves and all this and that. And then we go into the industrial age, start punching clocks, and people have different things and assigned duties and everything like that. And then we go into the technology age, and then we go into the information age. Well, we're in the information age, and I think you all know that the rate of change is going thousands of times faster than it was even 10 years ago. And it's going to get even faster because of technology. So when you think of that and change and transition, can we see ourselves as resilient, as adaptable, as, picture yourself as someone who's a change artist. The last thing you want to do in a job interview is to go in and say, well, I don't really like change, and I like to keep things. Employers are looking for someone who's team-minded and very resilient. In other words, you can do 5, 6 tasks at a time, be in several different committees. And you know what? When healthcare, there's a big thing in the issue, but once we have portable healthcare, whenever that is, this year, next year, jobs, people hang on to jobs because of benefits. The estimates are that over 50% of the workforce will be contract workers, and probably within the next 5 years. Being an employee is a paradigm shift. It's not an employee, it's working. I am a company of one, and I work for maybe 1 or 2 or 3 companies, and I contract. And that's okay, because I still got health care. And I'm probably, what they're paying me, I put into my own 401k, or I put into my own IRA or something like that. Because pensions are gone too. Who has a pension anymore? You can't think of it that way. So here again, I have a tendency as a career transition person to want to go into that kind of stuff. But just so we have a perspective. Let's talk about stress, though. Stress is good and bad. Stress motivates us. Stress gets us going where we have to. Now, let's say, if you get married, is that stressful? Yeah. It's kind of neat, isn't it? Staying married is stressful, huh? I saw that. Go, feel free to hang it up. But it motivates us. It keeps us going. Now, and stress is cumulative. That's why I said you have fun during the day and exercise. All of that minimizes stress. So the idea of stress is it can't build up to a point too much, because then it's unproductive and people start acting crazy. And as you said, irritable, or anything like that. So it's important to think of stress. Okay, that's all right. We need that. A certain amount of stress gets you out there networking. It gets us out there looking for jobs. It gets us happening. But when it gets too much, then we fall off the wagon and we don't do anything, or we stay into ourselves, or we do unproductive things, or get into self-medication. So don't get too uptight the fact that we have some stress. That's good. But at the same time, take as many precautions to keep it down, too. Make sense? I know I'm going fast, but I want to make sure we have time for questions and that we cover everything. Perspectives. Well, there's all kinds of perspectives. One that I don't even have on there. Job loss hits everyone, right? Look in the last year, 2 years. We've been averaging 500,000 a month, 500,000 to 600,000. I think it's just started dipping down below the 500,000 a month now in the United States. But there's hundreds of thousands of people. Let's see, high-profile guy, the president and CEO of GM, got fired, didn't he? Okay, now he probably made out a little bit better than we did with $20 million severance package. But job loss hits everyone. Whenever there's change in an organization, new leadership, new product, acquisition, the economy goes down, no longer a use for your product, anything time there's a change, that means people are going to be caught in the middle of it. Now, you notice the other day in the paper with cars, the clunkers, that the fellow who sells the stuff for freezing up engines all of a sudden has got a whole new business. Think he knew that 2 months ago? Probably not at all. No, he got to capitalize on that. So every time there's a change, there's an opportunity. The Chinese sign for danger and opportunity is identical. You probably have seen that or read that. The symbol is it a danger or is it an opportunity? Every time there's a change, there's opportunity. You have an opportunity for your next chapter, and that's exciting. It's scary. When's the next chapter going to be written? Where is it? When's it going to happen? But there again, if as I am a believer, I always just say, okay, for me, I know I'm in God's hand. I know something is going to happen. My job is to stay faithful and focused and to work as hard as I can, because I know something good is going to happen. I've got that promise. Okay, work is what you do, as I said before. Don't define ourselves by this is my job. You are John Doe, and you are a valuable person, and you do have these skills, and you do have that, and you have this family. You start looking at all the good stuff you got. That's who you are. I know it's tough. I remember a lot of times just sitting there saying, oh, yeah, that's what I was. And that's the process of redefining, yes, but who am I? Now, I worked with a career counselor. I was fortunate. One of the people that had worked for me, I went to her and I said, hey, I need an outside source as I'm going through this career search. It was very, very beneficial. By the way, every one of my employees left during the time that they made all these changes. One person stayed with me, otherwise they all left, said I'm not working under these circumstances. So I could see the handwriting on the wall again. It was horrible for me, it was horrible for them. But that person really helped. So if you can get any help along that line, defining who you are. Remember, every beginning starts with an ending. I don't know if you ever heard that, but with transition, you have to say goodbye to the way it was. And you can't start on a new one until you say goodbye. That's not me. That's the end. That's the end of that chapter. Let me write the closing paragraph. Because when you're writing the closing paragraph, it's very hard to focus on what's the next chapter. So that's why I say the forgiveness, the closing of it, just saying, okay, enough. I want to focus looking through the windshield. I don't want to look through the rearview mirror or looking out the back window. So every beginning starts with an ending. Every job has a shelf life. You ever seen a job that didn't have a shelf life? And now, with as fast as we're going through the changes in life and the changes in jobs, most jobs, they're ending a lot quicker. Now, I'm not sure. I think I read something about that. I have a granddaughter who just finished kindergarten. That when she gets out of college, the most popular jobs are what's available. 8 of the 10 haven't even been invented yet. And yet when we get, at least when I got out of college, I started thinking, okay, you're going to be a doctor, nurse, policeman, you start thinking of all that. For her, 8 of the 10 best jobs haven't even been invented, and they will be evolving as we go. So talk about being resilient again. They're telling kids coming out of college, you'll probably go through 14 to 17 different jobs. My dad was worried after I left my organization. I worked for Pine Rest. I worked for them 26 years. What are you doing? What are you doing? I thought, I put in my 42, 44 years. That was the mentality. And then when I joined this other organization, it was fantastic. And then as I was working with people who were going through a transition, saying, wow, this is fun. This is a great opportunity. Before I even left my former organization, I had somebody else come up and say, would you please work for us? I said, well, no. Right now I'm taking 6 months off and just trying to figure. I got a severance package, which allows you to do that. I said, I just got to figure out who I am and what I'm all about and reinvent myself. And I did end up joining them. I did contract work as an independent contractor and a lot of others, and said, boy, RBC is a fantastic place to work. I never envisioned that years ago. Never. I wanted to get in when you define where you want to go, I wanted to get in a culture that was meaningful and that I felt valued. I was in a brass knuckles culture there for a while. Pays big time, pays well, but you also pay emotionally. I wanted to get in an environment that was of significance, something that was lasting, something that would give me more of me, something that helped me change, and just saying that's what I want to be about. My son's looking at not-for-profit. He says, okay, 60 hours a week, I don't know. Maybe I want to get into something else. Maybe I want to get into teaching. So he's investigating all that stuff too, as well as being a plant manager or a human resource person, which he started off. Tomorrow is going to be different than today, folks. We all know that in our head. It doesn't help when you're feeling in a valley today, but we're in a time. It's going to be. There is hope. Tomorrow will be different. You've mentioned many times about you're always one person away from your next job. Job is only as good as you know it today. I don't know how many people I've said that, in my 13 years of career management. Your job is only as good as what you know today. And I'd even say that to people. I say, yeah, I got a good job right now, a lot of things that are happening, but I don't know if it'll be here tomorrow. Little did I know that it wouldn't be there tomorrow. It's a process. And then managing your career versus getting a job. You hear of career management. In talking with my son and many other people, he's looking for a job, and I said, maybe you better just focus on whatever job that you can get today that's meaningful and everything for the next year or two. Because finding the ideal job may not be where you are, and you got to get some income coming in. And, that's advice that I wouldn't have given years ago. I just say, make sure you get in the right fit. Because otherwise, after 6 months, you say, what did I do? I didn't research, I didn't do this, I'm working in a place that I can't stand. But I think we all know that some money is better than no money. But career management is looking at your whole future. Where do I want to go? What do I want to be? What am I about? What's going to make me happy? What industries do I want to be in? What's the title? You look at yourself and say, now, how do I get there? What do I got to do? My young son, who's kind of assertive and a go-getter, he went through 4 jobs in his first 5 years. But as a young person, he says, that's the way I advanced myself. Through those 4 jobs, he got himself probably an extra, I think he said $22,000, because he promoted himself. Worked with one job and said, oh, I keep looking, find another one, got a little bit more, go to another one. Now he's with a real good job, and it's just flowing in. But see, he's the adventurous. He's the entrepreneur. He loves going out there, taking a rest, do this and do that. All right, briefly, talking with others. If it isn't fresh on your mind, you don't have to sit there and think about how do you talk to your spouse. But it's important to be open and honest with your spouse, and it's important for spouses to be supportive. I've been through some situations where after 3, 4, 5 months and somebody's spouse says, this is so frustrating, when are you going to get a job? Well, when you're already doubting yourself and you're done, it's so important. As I talked to my daughter-in-law, I said, it's just important that you're the best cheerleader, that you keep nurturing, because Chris is beating himself up already. He feels guilty. Feels bad that he's not supporting. He'd do anything for it. And she's done a fantastic job of being his cheerleader and hugging him and nurturing him. And she's looking for a job also, and they're helping each other. And I watch him sit there on the computer, and where she's do anything to bring in $10 a day. $10 an hour. It's bringing in some food. That may not be where she wants to be, but right now it's all hands on deck. Children, I always advise be very positive and be careful, and it's in that book too, on dealing with kids. You want to let them know that you're okay. The last thing you want to do is just say, well, you can't go, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. You want to just let them know that, hey, right now times are a little bit lean, and we have to kind of be very careful. And this is a temporary thing. But your response is going to dictate their behavior. So if you're panicked, no, of course you can't have an ice cream cone. What's the matter with you? Don't you? It's going to be very irritating. And, make popsicles. Saw my daughter-in-law with the kids I hadn't seen this since I was a little kid, the ice cube trays, and she poured in lemonade and then put it in the freezer, and then the kids had that. Well, that's better than getting it someplace else. There's all kinds of ways. They're shopping at Aldi's. Stop the garbage, share it with a neighbor. Stop the newspaper. He looks at it on his computer. Stop watering the backyard, just the front part only when necessary. He's just going through every last little thing in terms of, it's humiliating. He said, this is the most humiliating thing I've done. I said, yeah, It's taken a big hit, but let's do what's necessary in order to get through it. Close friends and relatives, don't tell them too much about your pain. Always make lemonade out of lemons. I'm down to a few more minutes. Share a little bit about, what's going on, but always present it in a positive way. Yeah, I'm looking for this as an opportunity to reinvent myself. I know there's something out there. I keep a positive attitude. I have good faith, and I know I'm going to come out of this okay, because they may know the next person who has a job. Your attitude. You have control of your attitude. And then the general public is kind of the same thing, but during interviews, the last thing you want to do is let it across that you don't know, that you're sour. Moan about your previous employer, anything like that. You want to keep everything positive. You don't want to do anything that's going to... Going forward, leaning into the pain. I talked about how important that is. My son, in the terminology, is starting to hit the wall. And what does that mean? After 3, 4, 5 months, you start hitting the wall. You've networked. You've met as many people as you can. Things are starting to dry up. He doesn't know what to do. He's hitting the wall. And I try to talk to him, call him every day, and just help him through that, because I've seen it with so many people. It's tough. Lean into the pain. Connecting with others. Still going out. Connecting with other people is probably one of the most important things to do. Take control of your life. I said you can control your attitude. There's a lot of things you can't control, but your attitude is something you have 100% control. Be physically fit. Do things that help you out. Stay connected. All those kind of things. Taking care of yourself. I mentioned the importance of exercise. Having the fun. Volunteering. My son said, I think I want to help out with Habitat for Humanity. One thing that you find is that when you give to others, it's a good feeling. It comes back to you. Trying to tell that, my son says, my younger son, what are you doing today? I says, I feel good when I can just contribute. And not looking for anything else other than my own satisfaction that I can make a difference. Plan your work your plan. All kinds of processes, but you can get that online. You get it in other seminars today. But don't just go out and apply for a job. If you haven't figured out what the company is all about and what you are all about and what value you can add, then you just sabotage it. Lastly, be likable. Have some energy. Got to go out there and get things done. Project that image of a person who's positive and is going. Now, they're going to have another group that's coming in here, and what we'll do is we'll keep the door open so people can come in, but if there are questions, I can be around to answer that, and then I'll also be out by the table here, the spiritual and emotional, and you can pick up any of these booklets that you might want to see also. All right? I realize I rushed and I apologize, but I hope it gives you something for today and some different tips. Do you have a question?
I had 2 questions.
Yeah.
First, we're talking about the 3 traits that will make a person successful at overcoming their job loss. Said to have faith and social networking for support, and then I didn't hear the third one. I'm not sure if you.
And I didn't finish it because I'm sitting there. Remember, attitude, a positive attitude. Is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? So it's attitude, faith, and now social network, but there's another word. What do they call it? Your support system.